you all so much for joining this call today. I want to talk a little bit about ITIL. That seems to be what I talk about the most, and this big phenomenon about ransomware. Some of the biggest industries that are being hit are healthcare and financial, anything with personally identifiable information or credit card information. Those are the things. But if you have an ITIL framework in place, I want to try to show you, it says 10 highly guarded steps, but there's a lot more than that, obviously, to being able to use ITIL framework to protect your organization against ransomware. Now, obviously, Simplilearn is a company that I've gone through their courseware, and I think it's just phenomenal for ITIL. And if you do not have a background in ITIL or an understanding of ITIL, you should definitely check them out. My name is Manuel Lloyd. Tell you a little bit about me. I was homeless for the first 16 years of my life. I went in the United States Marine Corps when I was old enough to make money. I got out of the Marine Corps. I started my business, and I've been doing this for about 30 years now. The only thing I think that's really special about me is I've come up with this formula here. I don't think there's too much special, but I've come up with this formula here about operational efficiency. And it's worked for me for the past 30 years, and it fits right within the framework of ITIL. So I want to just point that out about myself. If you guys want to talk more about that and about how that applies to ITIL, we can talk in the community forum. So let's begin, okay? So I have a guy here pointing a gun at you with his hand out, holding you ransom. You know, he wants to give you your data back after you pay for an encryption fee. Well, that doesn't always happen, believe it or not. And the Bitcoin is untraceable pretty much, and the people get away with the ransom. You know, a lot of people say businesses are no longer safe. Ransomware is quickly becoming the largest IT threat to critical data, but I say data is no longer safe. They could care less about your business anymore. They want your data these days. And this is what we're going to talk about and how we can use one of my favorite pieces of the ITIL, which is IT continuity continuity service management. So let's get into it. I got this graphic here from AVG, which is a AV company. That's very interesting because now they have a stream of their AV, their antivirus program, that looks for and protects and detects ransomware. And it's pretty cool. So let me just kind of read this infographic here. It talks about ransomware. A growing amount of small to medium-sized businesses say a falling victim ransomware. Malicious software that holds your computer and its data at ransom. Now, this is a big problem for those highly regulated industries because our federal government in the U.S. at least, I don't know about some of the folks who are from the other countries, but in the U.S. there are heavy fines for not protecting data. As a matter of fact, in the healthcare industry, you can get fined up to $1.5 million US for every medical record that has been breached. That's a lot of dough. So looking at these numbers here, 400,000 samples of ransomware in total, 1.2 million new samples just in 2015 alone. There's 60,000 new Locky infected computers in a 24-hour period. And if you are not familiar with the Locky virus, thank God for that because you don't want to be. I've had some clients that my team and I had to help with the Locky virus issue. They did not have an ITIL framework. I won't say what framework they did use, but they didn't have ITIL. And I truly believe that if they would have had an ITIL framework within their IT systems, their financial systems, and their line of business operations, they would have been okay. Because that's the framework that we use to mitigate the problem. There's $325 million USD in damages caused by one form of ransomware, which is called the crypto wall worldwide. And here in the U.S., the FBI say it's pretty much uncrackable. You really can't do too much with it. But I'm going to, share something with the FBI. Maybe they should look at ITIL. So the average ransom is between $200 and $10,000, but I've seen a lot more. Recently, a medical facility out in Hollywood, California, had to pay $3 million to get their data back, and that was really ridiculous. $27 million estimated ransomware paid by the untraceable currency in Bitcoin right now. That's a lot of money for a lot of nonsense. So again, I am a ITIL horn shouter, if you will. I'm a cheerleader for ITIL. I love the framework. I always have, even when it was a British standard 15,000 or so, or something like that. So let's go to the next slide. So it's just not a U.S. thing. You see all of these countries here that have been affected by the Locky virus, so the Locky crypto locker. And it's all over the world, of course, because of the internet. If you read some of my papers, some of my white papers, some of my articles, I'm not a huge fan of the internet, believe it or not. I love it for what it can offer, but at the same time, I find it very toxic, very unmanaged, and WWW doesn't really stand for World Wide Web anymore. It stands for Wild Wild West, if you will. That's a Western term, a U.S. term that we use all the time. But it's a big problem all over the globe. So don't just think that it's just here in the U.S. or they're in India or in Singapore or South Africa, wherever you may be. It's all over the world. Okay. I want to thank Rebecca Lockhart, too, by the way, for providing these infographics for me. They helped my presentation really well. My presentations can get kind of boring sometimes, so I need some help. A lot of organizations say, well, this doesn't really apply to me, right? I mean, or really does it? 70-something% of small businesses that have 200 employees or less are the #1 target of hackers. And if you have money, if you have personally identifiable information or EPHI, electronic protected health information, you are a target, and you're an easy target because they use the smaller organizations to ramp on to the larger organizations. Again, it's this connected world that we're in. You can look for, in my opinion, that the Internet of Things would be the next big wave of hacks, where cars and watches and just cyber terror of anything that's connected will be hacked, because hackers are very, very, very smart. And a lot of people don't recognize that, and you have to be very careful. That's why it's so important to have a framework in place like ITIL to have governance that's going to be a top-down, bottom-up approach, wide, you name it, broad and depth. ITIL has it. So, according to global research, 80% of small businesses do not use data protection, which is crazy because they think they're too small. Over half of the small businesses use email protection, while ransomware is mostly spread via email. So those other 50% are, you click on it, it's a letter from your bank, it looks like, and people they think they're going to get $1 million or $1 billion from somewhere, just all out of the blue, all of a sudden through email, and they don't realize what they're doing. Years ago, I wrote an article. There's an old saying here in the U.S., loose lips sink ships. I don't know if it originated here in the U.S., but I used to hear it all the time. But, loose mouse clicks sink entire businesses. When you click on something, you can sink your entire business. Everything's about transactions, right? You press enter, you click. That's a transaction. So employees within the U.S. are almost 4 times more likely to click on malicious links within an email because we're just so curious over here. We just are so curious, and not just over here, anywhere. Ransomware attacks, they have a significant negative impact on businesses and organizations, and since they are not always able to cope with ransomware costs, resolving damages can put them out of business, and so you have to be really careful with that. Let's move to the next slide here. Effective business uptime. You know, I'm a big promoter and advocate of zero to no downtime as much as possible. The race to zero downtime is something that I help my clients look at and manage the cost for. You know, in today's business environment, time is money. It always has been. You know, research here, among 300 respondents of this research from ABG within businesses of all sizes show that the documented downtime after an attack can be more damaging than the actual attack itself. Here's why. Let's say you have a client, or you know, I have a client that's making $1 million a day. Every hour, every single hour that let's say 800,000, because I'm not a great mathematician. Every single hour that this organization is down, they're losing $100,000 every single hour. How do you mitigate that? How do you overcome that? You know, 72 hours is the average number of hours the victim has to pay the ransom for ransomware. 72% of the infected businesses can't access their data for at least 2 days. So if you take $1 million, that's $2 million you've lost in those 2 days, because you can't see clients, you can't see patients, you can't see banking customers, you can't see, you know, people not being able to shop, and your doors are going to be closed. And 32% lost access for more than 5 days. And in the U.S., there's a statistic that if you lose your data or access to your data after a certain time period, more than likely within the next 2 years, you're going to go out of business. And that's a horrible thing, because no one wants to lose their job or think about someone losing their job. So just think about this. And I would love to have a discussion in the Simplilearn community forum about this, just to get some of your thoughts. And we're going to leave some time for questions as well. So we're going to talk next about how ransomware works. This is really, really simple. You know, you receive an email attachment, you open the email attachment, a macro infects your device plus the entire network. God forbid if you have network shares, or if you have, RDP, or if you have, roaming profiles or something like that in your Windows network. You know, next thing you know, one or more of your users receive a pop-up that says, hey, we have your data, you have this long to pay it, and this is how much it's going to cost to pay it, and you have to pay it this way. You know, the FBI in the U.S. are now telling people don't pay the ransom. Well, is the FBI going to provide that business with revenue for those days that they're down or their hours that they're down? So you can see the problem here is the FBI is being big and bad. Say, well, you know, don't pay the ransom. But what's a business supposed to do? Well, we're going to talk about that, because you don't have to pay the ransom. Every client that we've worked with so far who's received any kind of ransomware have not paid a dime. They paid $0, and I think ITIL framework for that. So you make the payment, and you're hoping that you're going to receive the encryption key to unlock your data. But sadly, that doesn't happen all the time. And if it does, what's stopping them from doing it again? This is the reason why the FBI says don't pay it, because they'll just do it again. You know, we're going to talk about how you can use the ITIL framework. There's many aspects of the ITIL framework, but I'm only really going to talk about one to fight ransomware and always win. So with protection, like for instance, this AD company like ADG now is doing, they're providing a stream of their antivirus software that will allow end users to protect themselves against themselves, if you will. So they click on an email attachment. This AV software has a smart engine that allows it to recognize that this is a ransomware attack, and the message is quarantine. So now you've averted a lot of downtime, a lot of embarrassment, because, you know, it's just not the downtime when ransomware hits. It's also the damage to your reputation. It's the embarrassment. It's the employees that you're paying $10,000 for a break to stand around the water cooler and twiddle their thumbs and talk about last night's basketball game or football game or TV show. And it's also, if you're in a highly regulated industry like healthcare or financial, then there are fines that you will have to pay. There's security incident reports that you have to give, depending upon the number of records that were breached or whatever the case may be, if they were breached. So the problem is that most businesses are ill-equipped to respond to ransomware. Now, I want to introduce a few of the current problems that are tied to ransomware. And there's no secret. All of you out there hopefully know that the best way to fight ransomware is with a good backup, right? But what does that mean? You know, what's a good backup mean? I attribute a backup, or really business continuity, is like a cake, right? So you have the flour, you have the icing, the frosting, you have the sugar, you have the eggs, you have the milk. All of those things are key ingredients to the one cake that's going to be at the end. So when your C-level executive or your director says, well, you know, that's going to cost too much money, one of the things you want to share with them is that a backup simply is not enough. Having a good backup is one good way, but ransomware is more of a disaster, and you need to think about a disaster. So the solution is going to be something that is, in my opinion, and my opinion has weight because it's worked so far over the past 26 years. And so I want to talk about some of the problems, though, that because disaster recovery, a lot of people say they do disaster recovery, but you have to be careful with that language because, and especially business continuity, because you have to look at that language. You have to have a plan that maps out what true disaster recovery or what true IT service continuity is. So, you know, I want to introduce a few of the current problems with disaster recovery methods and the current trends that are propelling for the growth of what people now are calling DRaaS, disaster recovery as a service, right? You know, when we talk about disaster recovery as a service, for instance, we're talking about cloud. We're talking about cloud, right? We're talking about data in the cloud, and people go, well, my data, how is it more secure in the cloud than it is here on my premise? Well, does your premise have a diesel fuel generator? Does yours have military grade security, biometric security, the whole 9 yards that you have with a data center that more than likely you will not be able to afford, SOC 2, SOC level type of data center. So having it in the cloud, I had this question this week from one of my clients, and yes, it's more safer in the cloud than it is on your premise because someone can break a window, break into your building, snatch your EPHI from one of your hot swap drives, and they're out of town, okay? And boom, you're done. You're done for. You might as well close your doors. So I believe that the solution is ITIL, IT Service Continuity Management, okay? Having this discipline, this is one of the disciplines that are in ITIL. You know, whether you're 2011 or version 3, you still have to have business continuity and disaster recovery. So let's get right into it. So we're going to talk about the problems with traditional disaster recovery, the 5 must-haves. There's a lot of appliance out there that they call cloud failover appliances. One company in particular that I have looked at, and I've vetted a lot of companies for my clients. We have a very agnostic approach. We don't sell hardware or software necessarily, but we do vet these vendors. And one vendor that I've found to be phenomenal, and Gartner even gave them a Cool Vendor Award. But if you look at their product, it's not just cool. It handles a very complex situation, which is business continuity and disaster recovery. And the name of the company is Infrascale, INFRASCALE. You may want to give them a look and see if they can, you know, give you a demo or something. But their product provides backup on-prem, backup in the cloud, and disaster recovery with an appliance. So we're going to talk about that, those cloud appliance cloud failover appliances, and then we're going to have some questions and answers. Okay, so virtually every business will experience some type of downtime. You know, pervasiveness of downtime. Here's some stats. 91% of those surveyed have had a data center outage in the past 24 months. 47% of companies experience an outage or downtime this year alone. And most people think that, you know, the biggest downtime issues are those that are natural disasters. Now, I live here in North Carolina, which is right on the coast, right on the beach, which is Hurricane Alley. We haven't had a hurricane, knock on wood, in years, but we've had several disasters from several organizations because of either hardware failure and human error. And I think this human error is more than this 22%. that it shows. Hardware failure, it's natural because it's hardware. It's a piece of equipment. And besides, and I hope no one sells hardware gets mad at me at this next statement, let's play it obsolescence. They're going to fail anyway just because we want to save some more metal, right? So the biggest misconception is that it's some major disaster that's going to happen. You know, it doesn't take a hurricane to take you out. It doesn't take a hurricane to take you out. So, and then look, as a matter of fact, these statistics, and I'll have to get the source for you. I think this is by Quorum, but I'll get that source for you. I thought I put it in there, but I didn't. But look at natural disasters, 5%, 5%. You know, and human error and hardware failure are huge, and software failure is lower than human error. Isn't that amazing? That used to be not the case years ago. So, make sure I get it right. So, okay, yeah. Downtime is expensive and cripples any business. You know, what's your cost of downtime? You have to calculate all of the employees that you have, plus the revenues that you generate, plus the overhead that it takes to run your business, and you calculate that on a daily rate. And some of these statistics right here show that average downtime cost per hour from an Aberdeen survey calculated the average cost per hour of downtime for all respondents that they surveyed on this. The average downtime cost was about $163,000. Small companies lost over $8,000 per hour. Medium-sized firms lost over $215,000 an hour. And large organizations reported over $600,000 per hour in losses. Now, if you're an employee of a company and you're going, wow, that's a lot of money. I wish I could make that. You know, the mere fact is that when businesses lose downtime, it's everybody's part to play a role in disaster recovery and business continuity, and IT service continuity management. Because when the business is down and they lose money, guess what? More than likely, you won't get paid. So it's your incentive to have skin in the game to make sure you don't click on something that could cause a disaster. You don't do something that could cause a disaster. And you're just being a little bit more careful, well, actually a lot more careful in these days, because cyber attacks are something that are on the rise. They're not scaling down. Okay, so there are barriers to on-demand failover though, right? Cost is one big barrier. They're very expensive. You know, you don't have enough IT people, so you have to outsource. You know, they're complex, and compatibility issues. One of the biggest things that you will hear more of, I think, coming in these next few years, and we've been talking about it for many, many years, is interoperability. Things just don't work together. Like I use a Mac, and I use Microsoft software, and I've never seen so many. If I had to pay a fee every time my Microsoft Office applications crash, I'd be broke. Okay, so, and I have a Mac, and it doesn't crash like that. So, and it's just something I'm not used to, and I'm not one of those Mac cult guys. I just like being able to work. You know, I have 8 kids and a wife and I have to take care of, so I can't have this downtime. So again, these came from actual tech media, these numbers here, and I can share more with you in the question and answer session. So, here are the trade-offs to traditional DR, right? You have off-site backup, which is not that expensive, but it can take days to weeks and sometimes even months to actually get to the point where you need to be. And remember, those days and weeks and months cost dollars, that cost the business, that can cost the business to close, that can cost you to lose your job. You know, but if you're ITIL certified, though, I'm going to throw this plug in here. I have to. It's just too funny. If you're ITIL certified from some training from Simplilearn, then you'll have high demand if that happens. And God forbid it doesn't happen. But you know, the point is, you know, get this training. So then you have cloud backup. Everybody's in love with cloud backup. Ooh, you know, I'm in the cloud. I can do this now. It's just cloud is just another word for hosting, right? I mean, that's all it is. So, but you take these innovative companies like ADG and Infrascale who've come together to make this thing more than just about a cloud backup and about a antivirus protection. They're making it about business continuity now. all right? So then you have an appliance backup. You go, okay, we're doing better, but you can see how the costs escalate as the time in restoration. The smaller time that you want, the smaller window, the RTOs that you want, the more it costs. So you're going to get to a breaking point here, right? But then you have a cold site DR where you have a place that you can go drop off your equipment and start all over again and build that. How long does that take? That could take a week. So again, there's that money that you're starting, that calculator's starting to run with the downtime. Then you have a warm site DR where everything's there, all the equipment's there, it just has to be staged, and connected. That costs, but it takes less time for downtime. Then you have a hot site. Then you're getting into companies who cannot afford any downtime. They lose millions of dollars in minutes. So they can afford to pay the higher dollar because they need to have their data back right away. You take a company like Walmart, and they have a major disaster from some kind of a pandemic worldwide. They're losing billions of dollars every minute, and they just can't afford that. So the cost of having a hot site DR is peanuts. But then you want to get to DRAAS, disaster recovery as a service nirvana. What if there was a way to be able to recover your site, recover your data for less money and in less time? That was one of the things I was really, really impressed with. And I'm not trying to sell you anything here, but that was one of the things I was really impressed with Infrascale. And I've vetted about 20 companies so far for DR as a service, who also have an appliance, who also does backup, so that we have an integrated solution that's interoperable across the spectrum of the entire enterprise. And Infrascale met those criteria. And there were some other ones out there that met them as well, but this one here, I just was really, really impressed with, that you could probably tell on this call. So DR, or disaster recovery, should be on demand, right? So the end user's working along, they're typing away, I'm doing my work, they're looking at YouTube, Facebook, whatever, okay? And then they run into a problem. So servers and applications are down. In this situation, here are some end users, they're working, but unknown to them that they're about to experience an unexpected disaster. So when a disaster happens, so the red X symbolizes the disaster when their servers and applications go down, and they're right in the midst of an outage. You're the one that has to deal with this if you're on a call, more than likely. How do you deal with it? What do you have on-prem that you're going to bring the system back up? What do you have in the cloud that you're going to bring the system back up? And I just bring it up just to say, oh, we brought it back up again. You have to think like a C-level executive. You have to think like a business owner and say, how much money are we losing every minute this is down? What kind of urgency do I need to put into this? So you have, your redundant servers. They come back online, but if they fail, so then you still have the situation. So you want to have a disaster recovery that can take minutes to seconds, maybe an hour at the most, because the window that you're dealing with in the case of a $1 million a day company, or let's just take the case of an $8,000 an hour company. You want to try to get that down to $4,000 or $3,000 or $2,000 or $1,000. You can't do that with traditional DR systems. You just can't do it. I've looked and I've searched the world over, and you just can't do it. So you want to have something that the user sees maybe 15 minutes of downtime, 30 minutes of downtime, no more than an hour. And you want to be able to have an appliance plus software plus a cloud partner that can help you with that. Okay, let's talk about the 5 must-haves of a disaster recovery solution. Okay, so number 1, you don't want to break the bank. Okay, traditional systems, they break the bank. You want to exploit cloud spillover. You want to get a complete coverage. You want to have something that I'm dubbing here, and others are even dubbing here as push button failover. You just push a button and boom, you fail it over. And then of course you want to encrypt your data. I know of companies that take tapes off-site, NAS devices off-site, servers off-site, and the data is not even encrypted, and it's sitting in their car or whatever the case may be. So let's talk about number 1. We don't want to break the bank. Traditional DR is very, very expensive, to implement. You have your production site, you have bandwidth costs, people costs, software costs, and then you have your failure site, which can cost you up to 3 times the money. So they're very expensive to implement. They're complex to test and use because you have to pay for tests, you have to set the test up, you have to do all of these different things, and it's really crazy. And then it messes up your RPO and your RTOs, your recovery point objectives and your recovery time objectives, and they're vulnerable to hackers. Number 2, because I want to get through this here and have some time for questions. We want to exploit cloud failover. This is the second secret of finding a vendor with cloud spillover. Why buy an appliance? You end up filling it up and then buying another appliance. You rip it and replace it, then fill it up again, and you continue this cycle, okay? So that's really the old way of doing things, where more space equals more appliance. There's a different way to do this. You want your goal to be where you can scale your DR in a manner that aligns with your business objectives. And when you're using an ITIL framework, an IT continuity service management, IT service continuity management, then you're going to be able to take all those principles. I'm an old school guy. I like the old ITIL way, but I'm fine with the new ITIL way as well. But you want to take those scenarios. You want to do a business impact analysis. You want to do a threat and risk assessment. You want to do a contingency plan. You want to do a dependency plan. And you want to write out your entire business continuity plan and make sure that you have everything that you need to execute that plan in the case of a disaster from the time that the disaster is thought to happen to the time you close out that business continuity plan that you're working on. So the old way is more space equals more appliance. The new way is why not use the cloud? More space equals more cloud. You can scale the cloud much faster than you can scale a piece of metal. So you want to get complete coverage, number 3, okay? You want to be able to back up any device, desktop, laptops, physical or virtual servers. You want to support any old operating system. You want to be able to deploy in any form factor that you need. You want to be able to store in any cloud that's out there, so it shouldn't matter. You want to be able to recover anything, virtual machines, applications, servers, the whole 9 yards. You want to be able to boot anywhere. Can I boot from the cloud? Can I boot from my appliance? You want that versatility of it doesn't matter what happens, we're going to bring our data back up. And then you want a failback on any system, virtual machines, applications, servers, networks, the whole 9 yards. That's just the simple way of doing it. And there are ways to do this in a cost-effective manner. And it starts with your education of business continuity, disaster recovery, service continuity management. And in my opinion, ITIL is the best way for any IT systems. There are other frameworks out there like Lean, Six Sigma, COBIT. All of those things are great, but I found ITIL to be the better framework. So you want a push button failover, right? And I kind of stole this information. I didn't really steal it. I stole this terminology from that company because that's what they tout is a push button failover. But you want to be able to, no matter what you use, you want to be able to support all environments, boot anywhere, and you want it to be wickedly fast. And of course, the obvious, you want to encrypt your data, right? Data is encrypted with the user. It starts at the user. You want to be able to have an encryption key, kind of like the ransomware people have an encryption key. You have to be very careful with this encryption key because if you lose it, you won't be able to get that data. You have to restart the whole process all over again. But you want to take that encryption key, you want to take that business continuity plan, you want to put it in a safe and lock it. And it's for your eyes only kind of thing. You want to have your data sent through 26-bit or 256-bit SSL, and you want your data to remain encrypted at rest and at the data center. So let's talk about the top 10 ways to prevent ransomware. Back up your data often. Back up your data often. Back up your data often. Now, if you have metal, then this gets difficult because you run out of space and you have to pay more money. So that's why cloud is a very, very good thing to have in this. You want to train your users to exercise caution. Train your users, because people are what make the world go around, right? Well, people are also what makes ransomware go around too. So you want to educate them to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Use a reputable AV company, software and firewalls. You know, these free, when I go to these clients and they have these free antivirus programs on their network, and you know, they don't respect the ULA agreements, the end user license agreements. They have these free tools and go, well, we have antivirus, and then they get angry when the antivirus doesn't do the job that they thought it would do because they thought they were being sneaky and not having to pay anything. Well, they end up paying anyway. And it gets worse, because if the BSA ever found out they were using software illegally or they broke ULA agreements, they could get fined. HIPAA violations come along with that. FINRA banking regulations come along with that. And it's just really, honestly, I don't like using this word, but it really is stupid to not have a reputable AV company and not have it licensed. We won't even work on a organization that has software that's not licensed. We will not even work on it. They'd have to get that fixed first, or we will have to pay us to fix it before we will do anything. I've found AVG to be a very reputable company. I use them. I recommend them. I'll be totally transparent about that. But they're very, when they first came out way back in the day, I was excited to see this German company doing something. I think they were born out of Germany. And I think they reside in Canada now, but they are a very reputable company. You want to have a separate windows for your backup and your Manuels scanning, so you don't run up into each other and it slows your network down, it slows the backup window down. You just come in the next day, it can't work, it can't operate, the network's congested, and it just makes for a poor decision making. Of course, if you have an ITIL training or background, you will realize that, because you'll go through the whole cycle of ITIL, and you should talk to the people from Simplilearn about getting trained. Then you want to have patch management, where you patch and update your software always. You know, love Microsoft, hate Microsoft. They are the leader in software operating systems and business productivity tools, but their software is very vulnerable and it needs to be patched constantly. Okay, so have a patch management system. If you don't have one, you know, throw me a note or something like that in the community forum, and I can give you a list of different organizations that I've vetted that I think are good, and I think you will too. Number 6, show hidden file extensions. You know, that way, if you see something that says not locking, you know, WinDirStat is a good tool to use. WinDirStat, that goes and find out where those locky viruses are, or those files are, what's been locked, what's encrypted or not, so you can know what to restore from your backup. But you know, again, if you have a good DR solution, though, you're going to be able to have a test environment out there to go out there and play with it, bring your environment back up, see if it works, and push button failover it on it. At least Infoscale does that. You want to filter out the EXEs in the email. Disable files running from AppData and LocalApp Data folders. This is really a crucial step, number 8 here. Disabling RDP. I know people love it to death, but I disable it. And you want to enable pop-up blockers. Okay. So now those are things to do to prevent it. But what happens if you do get it? You know, 5 things to do if you do get infected by ransomware. You want to remove the infected machine from the network immediately. You know, not just, you know, delete the files and try to bring it back. No, remove it immediately from the network. And you can even, if you have a big network, just tell the users to unplug the cable. You just go in and remotely disable the network connection. You want to reset your BIOS time. This is going to kind of trick the locky virus until you have time to go in and mitigate the problem. You're going to roll back from a previous backup. And again, it's not just backup. It's backup, disaster recovery, emergency mode operations, the whole 9 yards. You want to stay current on latest threats, that's obvious, and you want to alert the authorities because ransomware is a crime. It's an actual crime, so you want to alert the authorities. So, and one of the biggest things in the ransomware, again, it goes back to money. And ITIL has financial management systems built into it to help you model this. But getting down to the nitty-gritty, down to the details, RPO or recovery point objectives are huge in a ransomware attack. So let's talk about that real quick. I'm gonna have like a couple more slides, and I will open up for questions. The old way of doing it is, you restore from a previous backup, right? This is with a cloud backup solution, okay, a regular cloud backup solution. So you restore from a previous backup, you start with the most current backup, you make sure to scan them for viruses on another PC, not the one that's infected. You want to check out files and folders that contain viruses and go back the previous version. Once clean version is found, restore the file and folder. There's some pros and cons to this. The only pro to this really is ideal when individual files or folders are infected. But what if you need to scan files and folders until you find a clean copy? How long does that take? How much downtime? The clock is running. Remember, the money is ticking. The clock is running. Another con to this is it's not effective if the entire server is infected. So a better way to do that is with disaster recovery as a service. So, you spin up the VM with your most recent image. Okay, you log into the booted image to verify it does not contain viruses. You want to inspect it. If the virus is found, go to the next most recent image. Now, the pros and cons of this, there's only one con really. It's much faster to inspect. The whole system is intact. Users can access applications immediately, and you can keep VMs self-contained. It can't affect the other VMs. The only drawback to it is, you must have a disaster recovery solution that can boot on a local appliance. And you can go out there and look, and so far I've only found one. That's Infoscale. So now, my last slide is always this slide, other than the questions, is here are the things that are going to be a monetization lesson for you when using ITIL, IT Service Continuity Management. You should be able to identify and focus on the highest value activities. So don't just think about, we'll get to that virus, that ransomware infection as soon as we can. No, it should be your highest priority. You want to be able to service multiple customers with varying requirements using only limited resources. You want to be able to define and measure and report relevant metrics to help with fact-based decision making. Having a management tool that tells you about your network, tells you about your environment. You want to have blameless reporting that tells you those things. And so I won't go through all of these. I think you'll get the slides. So this is my solution to fighting the Lockheed or any kind of ransomware. And if you use ITIL, and I've only talked about IT Service Continuity Management a little bit because you can't talk about all of that in 1 hour, but it's more than just IT Service Continuity Management. It's, service desk, it's problem management, it's configuration management, change management, release management. All those management disciplines that are involved in operational efficiency for your IT systems don't just deal with your IT systems, they deal with the entire business. And those are the things you have to think about as a C-level executive, as an IT operator, or as an IT network engineer, whatever the case may be. So I'll leave it open for questions now and let the moderator take back over. And I hope you guys have enjoyed what I said so far, and I'll take your questions now. Okay, I see a question here. Can DRAS solution have suggested scale to large global companies? 40,000 employees, for example. What is the current trending DRAS solution for global companies at the moment, cloud-based? I have not had the privilege of working with a global company like that. I have worked with AutoZone, Walmart, Target. They're global companies, but a DRAS solution for a global company is something that has to be scaled out, modeled out. Your biggest issue, Carl, is going to be, as you already probably know, connectivity. So there's 5 things that I always talk about, which is infrastructure, connectivity, mobility, performance, reliability. So connectivity is going to be your biggest issue there. You can take a solution, a DRAS solution, for instance, and I'm using Infoscale. I'm not going to be ashamed about that. I just found them to be a great company. They can take each one of your global locations and do what you need to do for each business unit and use an operational efficiency model that's going to align those departments or those functions with the business objectives of the entire organization. So if the problem that you'll run into, it doesn't matter what you really use, your problem is going to be connectivity. Now, I know Citrix has, you know, something in the realm of an SD-WAN or a software-defined wide area network or software-defined network where you can use bonding technology to have multiple cheap, if you will, connections, just like RAID, right? So you have a redundant array of inexpensive disks. You can have a redundant array of inexpensive ISPs or internet connections, and you share those across something like Cisco, CloudBridge, or Riverbed to handle your connectivity problem. But the draft solution that you have, I don't know if scale is going to be any more important on any other particular side other than connectivity. And I hope that answers your question. Ian, could you remind us of those suggested vendors you mentioned for DR, backup, etc.? Yes, I've looked at a lot of different vendors, a lot of different AV companies, and so far, knock on wood, the two that have been successful for me, there's three that I'm working with. Infrascale is one of them. They've done a really, really good job for DRaaS, disaster recovery as a service, for when you need to get something done really quick, get it up and running, and get it moving. I had a client that I needed help on a weekend, and they were able to get me 10 terabytes in no time and get that client backed up and have a DR solution in process. You know, there's another company out there that I work with locally here. I don't know what their international presence is. I think one of you guys say you're from Asia, but you can talk to them. They're Course 360. The guy's name is Rich Venna, that you can talk to. Matt, what's Matt's last name? Matt from Infrascale. I forget his last name now. He's going to kill me. But just ask for Matt from Infrascale. And then Rebecca Lockhart is a person that I've worked with at ABG who has a really great monitoring tool and really great AV for ransomware attacks. Those are the vendors. And does that answer your question, Ian? I only got part of your question, saying cool. So wouldn't the focus also be at having some controls? Yes. And that's what ITIL gives you, is control. ITIL gives you control from the beginning to the end, in my opinion. And I've been doing this for 30 years, and so far, not one single client has ever had to pay a ransom, has ever had to pay a hacker anything, not a dime. I'm knocking on wood right now, because I look at the Gartner reports, I look at the Forrester research reports, I vet the vendors very, very strongly through our own processes. That was that formula that I had in the beginning of the slide, that OE equals HX to the Y to the VY. That's a kind of my secret sauce. But yes, you have to have controls. There's three things that you have to focus on, especially when you're a large company. It's compliance, IT governance, and cybersecurity now. So the controls come from the entire framework of ITIL, in my opinion, because it starts with your service desk. It starts with the end user customer saying, hey, I can't do X. And the number one goal of ITIL is to get the customer back up and running in a business as usual environment. So yes, those controls are involved. Now, when you get down to the nitty gritty, saying cools, on ransomware and IT service continuity management, there are frameworks within that, and I don't want to steal the thunder away from Simplilearn. I think you ought to look at their curriculum and see. Now, I've gone through their curriculum on their ITIL, and I was really impressed. And I was one of the first people in the United States to get ITIL certified, and I was really impressed with their coursework. So I definitely would look to look at, maybe, I don't know if they offer a sample or a demo, but look through the coursework and you'll see where those controls come at in the service continuity management piece of it. Yeah, and yeah, you have to have strong controls. That's why I said it begins with the user, right? So you have to be able to train that user to make sure that they're not doing anything, because strong controls are not going to do anything if someone clicks on something. You know, it's akin to, you have a house that you're in. You and your family are in the house, and you have several kids, like me, right? I have 8 kids, right? So if someone comes and say, I'm here to see one of your sons, and I go, okay, without vetting that person, or asking my son, do you know this guy? Then I was the one that allowed that guy into my secure home. I unlock my door, let him in, and if that guy comes in and does something to me, how do you control that? You have to have protocols in place that are beyond just software. You're welcome, Sans Cool. I like your name too, Sans Cools. I hope I pronounced it right. Thank you. Is it from which data centers you are referring? Are you asking me where I got the information from, or are you asking me? Okay, yeah, I got this information from two sources. I have information from the resources, if you look on the slides there, from the different groups like Quorum, but I can give you the names and emails of the people that I've worked with, Matt Callaghan at Infrascale and Rebecca Lockhart at AVG, two globally recognized companies, done a lot of research. They work in this space and they provide they provide their products. I vetted them. Also, if you're in the States, they're in Atlanta, Georgia, or out Norcross, Georgia, a company called Chorus 360. Chorus, C-O-R-U-S 360. My contact there is Rich Bennett. I hope that helps, Fani. Cool, no problem.